Did you see this story about the Mar-a-Lago search?
I did not. Well, I know that happened.
Right,
You're
but
talking
something
about some
emerged
news story?
today.
Okay.
Yes, in the New York Times, at the very least, the strong implication emerged. It's a two-part implication. The implication is that Trump took...
This is as reported in the New York Times?
Yes.
Okay.
That the warrant was apparently in part motivated by, this is the claim of the New York Times, I am saying one way or the other. Mm-hmm. The claim is that Trump took documents that contained information about confidential informants to our intelligence apparatus, and separately, that confidential informants to our intelligence apparatus have been killed, compromised, or captured at an anomalous rate.
Since Trump left office. Something.
Yeah. This is a pattern that has been noticed in intelligence circles. Why are they being compromised at an anomalous rate? The assertion that Trump took documents that contains relevant information, and the therefore connect the dots implication is that he may have handed that information over to people that's getting these people killed. Now, I want to point something out about this. Somebody is engaged in treason. Could be Trump, but that seems really unlikely here, right? Because it's obvious treason to hand over information on confidential informants that are important to the U.S. intelligence apparatus.
If informants are truly being compromised, killed, whatever, etc., at an anomalous rate, if it truly is anomalous, then a breach has happened, and so wherever that breach was, that was a treasonous breach.
No. We got two candidates here. One candidate is Trump, and the extraordinary idea that a president would have left office, taken those documents, hand them over to people, knowing that that would result in things happening to those informants in the field, right?
That would obviously about motive here.
That would obviously
together, but okay.
Irrespective, even if he had the motive, right? I do put this past Trump. I would not imagine him leaving office, right? Especially hoping to return to office, compromising American informants abroad. So either he did that, which the New York Times certainly wants us to wonder about, or the New York
someone else did it.
No, or the New York
someone else didn't leave office, but
or the New York Times is engaged in treason in alleging so. That's the point. If you are a journalistic establishment that, on the basis of extremely weak circumstantial evidence, is going to raise this allegation about a former president, right? Well, you are engaged in a betrayal of the nation at an extreme level.
I would have to read the article. So you haven't even shown me the article here.
Well,
I don't know.
So let's just at least put it up so people know what we're talking about.
From your description of what's in the article, I don't have a clear enough understanding of what has been seen, of what the justification for the I'm missing all the right legal words here, but of the raid.
The raid, yeah.
If there's a document that is in the public domain, or that the New York Times has shared the relevant parts of, I can't make sense of that. There's a screenshot of a title of an article on a screen. You are claiming something that seems to me maybe, but I haven't heard anything yet that convinces me of that.
Well, I mean, I think you can certainly say, assuming the following is true, either the New York Times came out with evidence today that Trump compromised informants to the American intelligence establishment in a way that got them, or likely got them, killed. Either they present that evidence, or if they do not present that evidence, then alleging such a thing, or placing those dots so that they will be connected about a former president without that evidence is...
Well, how would it... So if that, which again, you threw this at me, I've never heard of this before, like 2 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, something. But even if the latter, what they're doing is egregious against a former president, but is that treason?
I believe so. So the problem is that this is obviously somebody who's eligible to be reelected today.
But, slandering citizens is not treason.
Slandering former presidents who are eligible to be reelected, I believe, is tantamount to it if it is not based on evidence. I mean, if it's slander.
I just don't have any of the information in front of me.
All right.
So, I've said what I have to say here. I'm not convinced, but I don't know. Like, you can show me what you've seen, and then perhaps we can come back to it, or hopefully not. or perhaps the New York Times will put its foot more clearly in its mouth at another moment.
I will say, you don't have to respond to it, but I will say their journalistic ethics would require the New York Times to behave very, very carefully in light of this possibility and what they have done.
What possibility?
The possibility that a former president has compromised confidential informants of the U.S. intelligence apparatus in such a way that has gotten them killed. Mm-hmm. Were that possible, the right journalistic thing to do would be to go very slow, not put it into public, attempt to find that information rather than report on it willy-nilly, right? Connecting those dots, or placing those dots so that they will be connected, is a political act. A political act in a highly charged context.
And this wasn't in the opinion pages. This was in the news section.
Yeah.
And that's something we haven't really talked about. The Nature of Human Behavior op-ed that we spent so much time talking about today is labeled an op-ed, but an op-ed at Nature is, so a scientific journal is different from a newspaper in a lot of ways, right? A newspaper has a news team, and it's separate from its editorial team. And the editorial team both writes some editorial pieces, but also solicits editorials from other people. And the news team is separate. There's like a firewall between them, right? And that is as it needs to be, because the editorial pages of the newspaper doesn't make the newspaper. The news is over in the news part. Whereas a scientific journal like Nature Human Behavior has scientific papers in it, and it also has editorials sometimes and news sometimes, but it's all the same people. There is no expectation of firewall. There is no presumption of or expectation of firewall. So it's the editors who are doing the first pass on the scientific papers that come in. Do I just reject out of hand? Do I send to peer review? And if peer review, which peer reviewers do I send it to? It's the same editors who wrote this op-ed. So there's no firewall there. And I mean, this actually is, I think, important too, in terms of like, what are we seeing in terms of the breakdown of our institutions and our organizations? Scientific journals and newspapers aren't the same. They aren't structured in the same way. You can't have the same expectations of them. But one thing that is true is, if this article that you're talking about, that I've barely seen a headline for, was published in the New York Times, in the opinion pages, they can do whatever they want. But the standards are different when they are publishing it in the news division. And
well, I mean, there are three tiers. You've got the news division, you've got a New York Times editorial, and then you've got op-eds by columnists, and the standards would be different for all of those.
Well, but there's two divisions: the op-eds written by the editorial staff at the New York Times, and the op-eds written by people from the outside, which are solicited by the editorial staff,
yeah.
or there, you can also, like, cold call is not the right word, but you also submit, and maybe you can accept, maybe you don't. But that's all sort of in-house in the editorial wing, and then the news wing is different. Yeah.
I agree. I just, the statement that they can do whatever they want is obviously too strong, because
it's a little too strong, but under the auspices of this is our opinion, they're allowed to do a lot more.
They have more.
And part of what you're saying is there's a news article. There's an article that is purporting to be news, that is reporting the news. All the news that is fit to print, I believe, is the New York Times logo, or motto, rather.
Yeah.
And if they reliably print all the news that fits their ideology that is fit to print, and not all the news that doesn't fit their ideology that is fit to print, then they have fallen down on their journalistic standards, and they aren't doing journalism anymore.
Right. I'm saying something more, which is that if they are attempting to create the impression that a former president has committed treason, and it is not based on actual evidence, it is based on the juxtaposition of facts that do not have a relationship to each other, right? Then what is it to allege treason, or to create the impression of treason artificially by juxtaposing those objects in your, news pages? right? And my point is that is an egregious breach in the context, especially of a person who is eligible to run for office, that is an exotic intervention into a political discussion masquerading as an evidentiary claim.